Thank you, Commissioner Bell, and we appreciate having your presence. Ellen and I are just going to do a brief introduction to the report, and then we're going to hand over to Richard Randerson, who's going to chair the panel of politicians who have, we're very grateful, have come and are willing to share in this particular launching tonight. Recently, a group of our clients met together for a morning to think about how child poverty could be tackled in our community. And at one point we asked them the question, what would you say to the Prime Minister if you had the opportunity to say something to him? And almost before I'd stopped saying that, one young woman said, "Come and live with me. Come and live with me." And it seems to me that that's a really important picture of what we're trying to paint here in this 2013 report, of what it's like to actually live in those neighbourhoods, in those families, in the 20% of New Zealand families whose children live in poverty, the 17% of New Zealand households where no one has any income-producing work, the homes where 21,000 children suffered abuse or neglect last year, and the parents who moved as much as 3 or 4 times last year in the attempt to provide secure, affordable housing for their children. The picture painted of the social health of our nation by the 2013 report has patches of hopeful light, which we're grateful to be able to acknowledge, on a canvas which is still very dark and depressing. The patches of light come from statistics which reveal a reduction in overall crime, fewer people in prison, less recidivism from offenders, increasing early childhood participation and lowering teenage pregnancy rate. The picture, however, is still dominated by the rather depressing darkness, which is poverty amongst our children is not improving, blighting their personal futures and the nation's future. In Auckland and Christchurch particularly, but not exclusively, families are living in housing that is either unhealthy, unsafe, temporary or unaffordable. And no light is really emerging in that picture, despite much talk and many proposed solutions. Government's policies are at this stage not making or achieving any real change in assuring the availability of social and affordable housing. At the very time that the nation needs more workers to rebuild from national disasters, an increased number of young people cannot find work opportunities. In a few minutes we'll outline, and the report outlines some of the details of that. It seems to the Salvation Army, as we've thought about this year's report, that the reality of these human dilemmas and the harm they're causing is not really sometimes absorbed as well as it might be by the general population and our nation's leaders. Beating these major social problems should be a top priority if we really care for New Zealand and its people. Corporately, faced with alarming social statistics, the attitude too often seems to be, "She'll be right, something will happen." And the prevalence of this "she'll be right" approach drives the title of this report. The reality is that a "she'll be right" approach to pressing social problems leads to human casualties, and it leads to the demeaning of us all as a people. A far more vigorous, urgent and creative leadership approach is required if we are to reduce the social harm being caused. And as New Zealanders, we cannot be complacent about the damage being caused to our fellow Kiwis and our neighbourhoods. Rather, we need to demand from our political and national leaders a solution-based approach, creative, vigorous, courageous leadership to reduce child poverty, to house more New Zealanders and to get the nation's young people into work. Too much time is being spent on saying why the other person's idea is not going to work, and too little on actually coming up with clear, achievable plans of action. In recent years, the tendency has been to point to the constraints of a weak global and national economy as a reason not to address social need. While such a set of economic circumstances demand a greater amount of ingenuity, a greater sense of creativity to obtain success, they are simply not an excuse to do little or to do nothing. The present government has shown that despite a weak economy, they were prepared to make progress in the areas of crime and punishment and early childhood participation. And there has been leadership in that area, and the State of the Nation report shows clearly where there have been gains for our most vulnerable as a result of a more energetic and innovative leadership. We see results that improve things for the vulnerable and their communities. That same vigour and that same leadership is needed in the social areas where no or little progress is made: child poverty, housing supply and youth unemployment. All receive in this report a D grade. If our children came home with a D from school, I think there would be a little bit of energy developed in the family at that particular point. And I think a little bit of energy needs to be developed in the nation about the fact that we are failing in those areas. The same vigour is needed from our political, government and government agency leaders, setting targets and plans that achieve a real and continuing reduction in child poverty that result in the building of significantly more social and affordable houses to make a difference in the poor housing provision in some areas of our country, and to ensure that young people don't start their adult careers unemployed, but they're rather in education or work. None of this is going to happen by itself. The politicians won't suddenly actually lead in a new way. Government organisations will not dramatically improve without a consistent and strong voice from all of us as Kiwis, which reaches past self-interest to care of what is happening to the most vulnerable citizens, children and young people. To stop saying she'll be right and saying it isn't all right, and we want from our leaders clear plans, deliverable committed targets to reduce child poverty, to build more houses and to employ our young people. I'm going to invite Alan now to just outline the major areas of this report before we ask our political leaders to respond to the report.